For as long as I can remember as a car enthusiast, I have always been into the wagon form. The practicality, the ability to be able to throw the dogs in the back, haul a bunch of people around in a really, really cool style. As of late, we have had many performance-oriented wagons in the market with the Audi RS6, the Mercedes E63 wagons, but this is a company that my friends and colleagues like Kyle, Max, and Jordan with the Out of Spec team have really opened my eyes to. I've never really been around the Volvo brand all that much, but I'm very excited to bring this brand new 2024 Volvo V60 Recharge Polestar Engineered wagon here today. What a name that is, but man, oh man, am I impressed. Now, one of the things I wanted to do, since I've never been around one of these vehicles, is take you guys through a full build quality analysis, looking at the exterior fit and finish, all the panel gaps, see how things line up, talk a lot about the paint, look at the orange peel and texturing in it, look at the imperfections it came in with. This is a fresh example of the V60 Recharge. This has 150 miles on it. It was not washed upon customer delivery of the vehicle, so we have a brand spanking new one, and I'm very anxious to see how many scratches are on this thing, how much paint is on this thing with a paint meter, go through all of that. Lastly, we're going to talk about the interior of this because the price point is really intriguing for what you get with this particular vehicle. You have a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine up front with an electric motor, so you can drive this on battery only in full electric mode, or you can combine the two for quite a spirited drive with the Polestar Engineered package this has on it. So welcome back to another out of spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. Let's jump into it. Now, before we jump into the actual build quality analysis, let's talk a little bit about the price and kind of where this sits in the market. Well, realistically, this is very performance oriented as a wagon. This has the Polestar Engineered package with it, of course, and being that it is basically a plug-in hybrid here, we have 450 horsepower, 0 to 60 in around 4 seconds, some really impressive upgrades featuring Öhlins dampers, Polestar Engineered springs, we had Brembo brakes. A really intriguing package for a vehicle. Like I said, you can throw the dogs in, you can throw the kids in, and then you can go carve up a canyon. Now, price point on this comes right in at $71,250 with 0 options. And I gotta say, that seems like a lot of vehicle for what you're getting here. I'm thinking, you know, Audi A6 all-road would be similar to this price, if not quite a bit more. And this is substantially cheaper than, you know, an Audi RS6. Yes, the Audi may be a little bit quicker, but this thing is really a sleeper. This is one of those that I know the enthusiasts are super into. It's not a vehicle that I think most people really know about, but I love all of the little details going into this car. Now, this particular example is spec'd right below $74,000, and man, oh man, I think that is a very interesting price point. Something that I might keep my eye on in the future. So like I said, Volvo is not a brand that I've interacted with a ton. I have had the XC40 Recharge in here for a detail, and I think that's about the only Volvo that I've actually detailed. So I'm really anxious to check this out, but so far, after just a first initial wash, getting to learn and understand a little bit about the fit and finish of this vehicle and all the little details, I gotta say I'm really impressed. So first, let's start off looking around the exterior, talking about fit and finish, then jump into the paint. Well, let's start here on the front end of the V60 Recharge. Of course, here you can see the Polestar Engineered badge, indicating that it is really the top trim of the V60 Recharge. And man, oh man, the accents on this thing. I just love the little details Volvo did on this to really make it stand out, but in such a sleeper and subtle way. Really cool things like the gold brakes here with the Polestar Engineered logos here here, the gold valve stems. You'll see more of that stuff inside as well. But let's start here on this crazy long hood. This thing is truly huge. I hope it comes through on camera. It is impressively large, but a very, very nice style to this. Again, that really sleeper look. I have really not looked twice many times at Volvos and the wagons lately after the guys have been telling me, oh, the V60 Recharge is just the coolest thing out there. And I gotta say, seeing this in person, wow, it really has a statement and a nice presence. But starting here on the hood, panel gaps here are looking fantastic. And this is one thing I want to go through with Volvo, me starting to understand the ethos of the brand and how they put things together. Like, are they super luxury? Are they kind of somewhere in between? I'm not exactly sure, and I'll definitely let you guys know throughout this video my thoughts and feelings on that. But all of the panel gapping here looks absolutely perfect. Very, very flush fitment up here, moving into the quarter panel. All really, really tight body lines here, looking fantastic. Down the door, all of this is perfectly put together. Even these ridges, very, very tight as far as alignment. Moving to the driver's side, let's check out how this looks over here. This hood slash bumper is looking really, really nice. Very, very precise gapping here, and basically the same exact thing here on the driver's side. Now, this being a plug-in hybrid, of course, we do have a charge port here located on the driver's side front fender with our J1772 port. I think they got this charge port perfect. I talk about this a lot, over-engineered charge ports. There is absolutely zero wrong with having a normal flap that is manually operated, that feels completely nice, totally premium, and I think it is going to work for years and years to come. I always talk about these crazy ones that are flipping up, and you know, something like a Rivian that I've been seeing a lot lately is their charge port doors. They open up and they're all flimsy. This feels absolutely perfect. Nothing wrong with this here, and really, really like it. Moving down here to this body gap, absolutely perfect. So far, I'm seeing very, very positive remarks as far as the fit and finish on this particular vehicle. And again, keep in mind, this is a brand new one. We'll talk a little bit more about it once we jump into the paint, because I'm really anxious to see how this is actually delivered. Of course, here in the headlights, the Thor's hammer look, very similar, if not the exact same headlight, I believe, to my friend Kyle's Polestar 1 that he owns, and a very reminiscent style up here on the front from Polestar 1 to the V60 Recharge here. I really like the look of this without all of the plastic cladding, the use of gloss black accents. I think it does give it a very sleek and aggressive approach up front. Now, my personal preference as a detailer is to have as little of this piano black plastic as possible, but if you can maintain it, I don't think it's going to be a large issue here. I do want to say it is interesting, the Volvo logo here, how it is chrome, where there's really no other chrome on the rest of the vehicle, other than, of course, the diamond cut wheels. Maybe would like to see a blacked out option of that. Really convenient where they put the camera up here. Really nice implementation there. I will say the cameras on this car, once we move into the interior, the back camera is, to me, just seems like it's out of 2009. It's misaligned, so you get this really weird fisheye perspective on it. Now, everything up here, when I was washing it, looks phenomenal except for two things. One of those being this very odd license plate bracket. And I think you can see this one is slightly bent there. That could have happened during transport, but a very odd implementation there, especially having a metal bracket. I really don't love how these are drilled into bumpers. I really think manufacturers need to come up with a different way to put on front license plates without having to drill them, maybe making brackets that, you know, hold on here into the blower grill. Something needs to happen for those enthusiasts of us that hate having drilled bumpers, even for vehicles that are purchased later on in the used market. So that's one negative mark there. I'm not sure you can exactly put that on Volvo here, but something that I think needs to be improved. The other here is a Polestar Engineered badge. When I was washing this grill off, I noticed this thing just moves around like crazy. It doesn't even feel like it's fully attached properly. I believe these to be clips in there, and I think something that they just boom, clip on the badge, but that to me doesn't scream premium, as I can hear some squeaks coming out of it. All around the front though, really, really nice design. I like how they have hidden basically your park distance sensors here. I think that's a really, really nice implementation there, as we do have some down here on the sides, but it's really nice that those are hidden and not just these big circles all around the front bumper. We have headlight washers, of course, on here. We'll say they're slightly misaligned, but that's being super, super nitpicky. Actually, as I see that looking from lower, it actually looks pretty darn good. But let's move around the side of the vehicle. Of course, this is really where the wagon starts here. And man, oh man, I really am liking the shape of this, especially with these slightly flared arches as it looks here without any cladding. It looks muscular, it looks somewhat aggressive, but man, oh man, is it cool. One thing I was surprised to see on this was the lack of basically the Polestar 1 and 2 mirrors. The frameless mirror design, these are very, very, very large. And I would definitely like to see those mirrors implemented into the Volvo. That may be something that comes only when you purchase a Polestar. I'm not exactly sure on that. But door alignment here, man, oh man, this looks fantastic here. Very, very impressed. This is an area that a lot of companies get wrong. Even, legacy automakers, I've seen issues with Audis where basically these are all completely out of whack and alignment. It's really, really tricky for a lot of manufacturers to get those perfectly right. Now, one thing I would say as a critique for a detailer here is how manufacturers do weather stripping. This isn't a bad implementation here, but when you do get cleaning all of these areas, hopefully you can see here on this backside, they use a lot of this felt. And as you can see here, it holds in dirt, it holds in a lot of dog hair. This customer also has a dog. So things like that, getting in and out of the vehicle, that over time starts to look meh, if you will. Doesn't really look that great. You can see doesn't perfectly line up as this one kind of comes in, then it juts up. Not the end of the world, but it's definitely something to note. It's also really challenging to polish a vehicle around these. You really have to tape these off and be very, very diligent with that. But speaking of good things on the door here is these door handles. A very simple door handle. I think a lot of new vehicles are trying to go really, really crazy with having these over-engineered door handles. Think of Tesla Model S or Model X with the push button or the push out. There's nothing wrong with a normal door handle. And these also feel fantastic. They don't feel cheap. They feel very, very sturdy. Something that you feel getting into a luxury vehicle is every time you interact with the door handles. And I think a lot of companies get that wrong. Again, door gapping here looks absolutely perfect. Even these really rough edges here where they jut out quite a bit, very, very nicely done. Moving to the back here, this is all looking fantastic around here. Again, door alignment literally perfect. All of this rear quarter panel looks absolutely awesome. Now, of course, a signature Volvo style is to have a very, very large taillight. Love the little Volvo logo that you see in here. Just those little tiny subtle accents are so appreciated to put something in there to make it look less mundane and less boring. The back end of this, of course, is where it's really all about though. It being the wagon, the long roof, if you will. And yeah, everything, again, is still looking fantastic back here. I have very, very little things to gripe about as far as build quality and fit and finish. Interesting how the basically rear window tucks into underneath this light here. All perfect gapping around here. Very, very impressive stuff. Same on this side. Looks absolutely awesome. Now, I will say throughout this detailing video, we are going to be removing these badges. I would say, again, one of those things, it would be nice if Volvo would have an option for a black badge package, especially on their very limited color selection. There's only 4 colors you can option on the V60 Recharge here: white, gray, a somewhat green, and I believe a black. So I think it'd be cool to have the option to have black emblems there to really match the rest of the vehicle. This was also an optional bumper protection here, something that's really nice if you have doggos that are getting in the back in and out of the vehicle. But man, oh man, super impressed with this thing so far. One critique I do have is on the gas door here. This is basically locked until you hit a button inside, which I think is, okay, that's weird. The charge port, you can just boom, pop it open. This, you have to physically press a button. I'm sure there's reasons for that, but it does seem a little strange to me. Again, down this side, all of the gapping here is absolutely perfect, except for potentially this little area. This window trim is sticking out like this a little bit slightly, but that's being ultra nitpicky. Again, moving down here, looking phenomenal. Gotta say, so far my impressions of the fit and finish of build quality of this, very impressive. I am, yeah, honestly, one of the higher, I guess, on the scale that we've had here at the shop. And I can see why people really enjoy these Volvos. Very luxurious, but also oriented towards a little bit of performance with the Polestar Engineered. Let's talk a little bit about these brakes and wheel package we have on here. So we actually have slotted rotors. These come standard. These are made by Brembo, of course, in that very signature gold Polestar color. And man, oh man, I really like that. You can see the Polestar Engineered logo there. I will say, I always think these look a little odd, the valve stem caps there. Not a huge deal, but yeah, I don't think they look ideal. One thing I am noticing here, that park distance sensor definitely does not seem super aligned properly. It's not super flush there, so that could definitely be fixed. But gapping around the car, very impressed so far. Last thing I want to check out is talking about how the glass is actually put in here, something we see a lot on new EVs, having full roof panels, and a lot of these panels are really not properly put in. And here we of course have a sliding window as it is split. This all looks really nice and flush, as well as the windshield. So very high remarks there and very impressed with it. The roof bars here are of course awesome. I believe these come standard on here. This customer actually has the optional roof bars. They look to me to be made by Thule, which I think Volvo and Thule do have some sort of collaboration. And yeah, really cool to see a very high-end roof bar as a factory option here. So I think next, let's move into the paint. Let's take some paint readings on this, and then I'm going to spend a little bit of time walking around the vehicle, seeing what kind of scratches and imperfections I can actually find on the V60 Recharge. This is a paint meter here, and something that I use a lot here in the detail shop, of course, when we are talking paint corrections and polishes and making sure we actually have enough paint. Now, this has been, of course, as I've said multiple times, a very controversial tool. This is not a very expensive tool, but what I have seen is that it is very accurate as far as calibration. I have calibrated this multiple times and it works phenomenally. So just for your knowledge, we are going to be measuring the paint thickness in terms of mils. That is not millimeters, it is mils, completely different. Now, typically your average sheet of paper, maybe for something like a printer, is around 4 mils thick. Now, when we're measuring this, this has a little tip on it, this metal tip down here. Basically what it does is send a signal down to the metal paint or down below the paint to the actual metal, sends a reading back, and it shows how thick your actual painted surface is there. Now, you need to keep in mind with this, your painted surface has primer in it. It also has your color coat. I'm going to expect this one to show a little bit thicker readings than probably the other Volvos out there, because it is somewhat of a pearl effect white paint on here. Lots and lots of metallic on here. Really beautiful color and really, really impressed with it. But let's get into this. Again, I would expect to see around 4 to 6 mils of paint, 577. Looking very consistent here. So that's one of the things. I not only want to see a good amount of paint, I want to see a consistent thickness of paint. I don't want to see, 3 mils here and then in the middle of the hood see 7 mils or something similar. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I just want to get an idea of how consistent their paint is actually looking. And so far, I got to say, pretty darn impressed. Now, an experience that I have had actually with the Volvo brand is, of course, their sister company in Polestar, the offshoot with their fully battery electric vehicles, as in the Polestar 2. I have detailed one of those, and I would say the paint was not ideal. Now, one of the other vehicles I have interacted with as far as paint was my friend Kyle's Polestar 1, and his is actually a matte paint. And I gotta say, super, super impressive on the quality of paint, which I am also seeing here. The lack of crazy amounts of orange peel, far, far better than something like a Tesla. And yeah, looking really, really good. So 511, let's just go more here in the center. This is looking phenomenal. Very, very impressive stuff. Now let's start looking at other panels here. Very, very nice job, Volvo. Yep, super impressed with that. Now, just as we're moving on here, let's check some roof measurements. Wowzers. Okay, so a little bit lower there, still within the acceptable range. Still say, man, oh man, this is pretty darn consistent from what I see in most manufacturers. Now, panel to panel, you still will have a little bit of variation, of course, but man, this is looking quite good. Let's go here on the rear driver's door. Wow, very impressive stuff here. I am a happy detailer when I see consistent paint. Not a great number, but okay. So this is plastic here. 522. A little bit lower there. So this panel is looking a little bit, a little bit of variation definitely in between here. Of course, as I just showed you here, this is a plastic fuel door cover. 49, okay. Let's check up here on the roof. Okay, so got a lot of thoughts here. Actually seems really consistent to what I see throughout the industry. I would put this up there with probably similar to Audi. Definitely not Porsche level as far as paint thickness and the consistency throughout. I would say Porsche, in my experience, has been one of the best out there with the most paint, the most consistent paint, really low orange peel on it. But this is absolutely better than a lot of vehicles on the road. Way better than Rivian. Yes, they are a startup. They've been making a lot of improvements. I'm just giving you examples for vehicles that I work on. I know they're not really direct competitors. Definitely way better than something like Tesla that I interact with a ton. So yeah, very, very impressed here with the paint. Really impressed by the orange peel and lack thereof of it. Really liking all of the piano black accents here. Definitely is going to be interesting to see how these polish out. Every single manufacturer uses different piano black. Some, like Mercedes, are incredibly challenging to actually polish. They're a little hazy. They have a lot of residue coming off of them. Other vehicles like Porsche, their piano black is phenomenal, super easy to correct, doesn't scratch very easy. I'm gonna kind of guess this is gonna be somewhere in the midst of Audi, where it's, yes, it will scratch somewhat easily, but it's really easy to actually go in and correct. So I will give lots of props here as far as the exterior fit and finish on this vehicle. Very, very impressive, and very impressed with the paint. We have quite a bit of paint to actually go in there, compound any scratches we find, and yeah, pretty darn consistent. So I think lastly for the exterior, I'm gonna shut off the lights. I'm gonna quickly look around it myself with my scan grip light, seeing what kind of paint imperfections I can find. It may be very, very challenging to pick up on camera, but I will try and point out as much as I possibly can and show you guys how this was actually delivered. So I just had a little bit of time to walk around the car, and I've placed some red tape around areas that are a little bit not of concern, but definitely some areas that have a few scratches. Now, this here is my scan grip light. This is how I actually see imperfections in the paint. So typically if you were outside, let's say the sun is at noon, it's right above you, you're gonna see a lot of things like this, areas on the mirrors, on the roof rails that are gonna show scratches like that. But you're not necessarily gonna be able to see that much stuff here and in this area down more of the side of the vehicle until it gets later in the day. The convenient thing with this is it mimics the sunlight here, and I'm able to see things at whatever position said sun would actually be in. So let's just start up here. Now I have to say, pretty darn impressed with how this vehicle was actually delivered. All of these, yes, are scratches, but I would say none of this is out of the ordinary from any manufacturer that I actually see. First off, starting here. Now, some of this stuff may be very challenging to actually pick up. Hopefully you can see on that edge there, we have a little bit of scuffing around this area. We'll easily get that dialed in. Again, not the end of the world, just want to point that out. Here on the hood, we do have quite a big scratch, as you will be able to see around that light source right there. And it actually goes quite a long ways on the hood, probably 3 or 4 feet. So something may have gotten slightly dragged over that. Again, not the end of the world. Things that we can definitely and easily take care of. Now here in this particular area, it's going to be very hard to pick up on camera, but we have some scratches coming this way. You can see one basically right there. Very hard to show on white. In person, very, very easy to actually see. Now here below the charge port in this particular area, you can definitely see quite a few deeper scratches in that particular area. And a lot of this is actually from how the vehicles are delivered, typically with bags on them or things like that. Things get scuffed and scratched as those bags are removed. Now here, of course, soft piano black paint. And yeah, that's definitely not perfect. This could be from quickly wiping it at quality control from the factory. Doesn't look great, yes, but nothing out of the ordinary from what I see from manufacturers. You can see a little bit of glue residue down here on the bottom. We'll easily take care of all of that. Now, an area that really heavily gets scratched during transport is this particular area. You can see quite a few deep scratches here right above the door handle. Again, nothing out of the ordinary. On this soft piano black, quite a few scratches going there. B-pillars here, definitely really scratched up, very hazy. These look to just be wiped, and probably either my customer or the actual dealership, when getting in and out of this, closing it, causing a few scratches there. See the same thing here, definitely some white marks. Now again, very important to note, the dealership did not wash this thing. He said it came in off the transport. They did not rinse it off or anything. My preferred way to do it as a detailer, because we would definitely have a lot more of these scratches. Now up here, you can see in this particular area, where the actual roof bars were sitting. Now that was a dealer installed product and something that I did let my customer know. I said, I'm probably gonna remove these, polish around all of them. Once you get them in the spot you want them, I would recommend leaving them there. Roof bars can get dirt under them. They vibrate a little and can start to rub paint off if you're not super careful. This area back here, right in that edge of that piano black, that to me indicates bag rub. Now again, a lot of new cars come in with this entire white plastic, basically cloth around them. A lot of them sit on open transports and sits there and rubs areas like this. Now this was very, very prevalent when I was working with Audi and Porsche. The Audis were typically delivered on open transport, so those bags would literally sit there and rub and rub and rub. We had spoilers that showed up. Paint was completely gone in that area down to plastic or metal. Really, really kind of scary stuff. Now here on the taillight, definitely some scratches. Again, a very soft material, no problem or issue there. Very similar to what I see on basically every single manufacturer. You can see quite a bit of scuffing going along that way. Now the back end of the vehicle is looking quite good. Didn't find a ton of scratches down here. One thing I do want to note, hopefully you guys can actually see this, is the difference in metallic or pearl effect from the bumper here to this rear quarter. Very, very common. So what I'm seeing here is a lot thicker metallic or bigger metallic, and then a lot tighter. The color is noticeably different in person. This is something, yes, I don't like to see, but most manufacturers have this problem. You can really see it, how much brighter white that quarter panel is there versus the actual bumper. It's how the paint is laid. Sometimes they use different primers for plastic versus metal. So not the end of the world, but definitely something you notice as a detailer. You can really see it on this side, how yellow that rear bumper is versus up here. So just something to definitely note. My Model 3 over here is 10 times worse, so just keep that in mind. Lots of scuffing here on this tail light, right on this edge. You can definitely see it there. Some pretty big scuff marks right there, some deeper scratches up here. And again, as I was talking about with that bag rub or the delivery bags, whatever they exactly are using at Volvo, I'm not sure. Definitely some scuffing going on there. Just a few scratches around the car. I would say most of it, of course, is on the piano black here. Really interesting. These are actually looking like they're different color underneath the light. I don't know if you can see that. The left one looks a little more purple and the right one looks a little more blue. Interesting. Moving here to the mirror. This is the only sanding mark and polishing mark that I've seen on the entire vehicle. You can quite easily see that there. Again, something I see all the time on manufacturer vehicles is what you'll get is called a dust nib. Basically, a piece of dust falls on the paint. Come in and sand that quickly, buff it off. Company like Rivian that I've talked about way too much about, but is still issues that I see is they have a lot of those nibbing marks. They go in, try to denib them, and then actually cause some more issues taking off textured paint. And yeah, it just doesn't look the greatest. Here we've got a few deeper scratches in this particular area. You can really see them there on camera. Found a few of those spots around, nothing too severe. Definitely some more scratches under here in this particular area. So overall, I would say this particular car is, yeah, like a 7 out of 10. It's of course not perfect. Lots of issues with the piano black. Definitely some deeper scratches up here. As I would expect, you can see right there, whoop, big old circular scratch there. So definitely a few things, but I would in no means put it as horrible or extremely good. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. So now I think time is to jump inside, and you guys are gonna have to wait about 5 seconds. It's gonna be a few days for me. So I'm gonna detail the entire car. I want to make sure the interior is perfectly clean so I can really go through it and actually show you without having a little bit of dirt and some dog hair and things like that there. And here we are almost at the finish line, about 3 to 4 days later since you guys first started this video. Now, a quick point on the paint here. The paint was extremely nice to work with. This pearl white is really, really nice. Now, we did find a lot more scratches than I actually pointed out to you guys during the paint inspection portion of this, but I would say, again, still pretty average as to what I've seen throughout the vehicle. I would say the vehicle turned out incredible on the exterior, but let's talk a little bit about the inside as far as build quality and fit and finish on the interior. Now, I have really come to appreciate this car a lot more. I really, really like the small details that most people don't necessarily know, but I think they are just really cool. They're very, very classy. And I think as overall as a package, this is really, really nice. So starting here on the driver's side, first off here, the interior is a little interesting because we have fine Napa leather here on the front and actually leatherette on the rear seats. Now, what I actually would prefer in this car, and this may sound crazy, is to have that leatherette up front here. I am not a huge fan of leather. As a professional detailer for the past 10 years, leather is not the greatest material ever. Everybody thinks these vegan or synthetic leathers you're finding in Teslas and Rivians and other vehicles are complete garbage. And I would say it's actually completely opposite. Leather is a very, very challenging material to not only maintain, but it definitely wears down, holds a lot more body oils and things like that, and starts to really, really show its age over time, where I see with the vegan or synthetic leathers, that's not necessarily the case. But starting out here on the front seat, love the little accents we have here. So of course you can see the little Swedish flag over here. Again, just one of those little Easter eggs that you're not seeing all the time, but man, those little details, once it's all put together as a package, is really, really cool. Of course, we have the Polestar colored seat belts here. This of course adds about 25 to 50 horsepower. Kidding, of course, but I think they look extremely nice and really set this vehicle apart. Now the seats here, of course, we have the typical Volvo headrest for safety. They look really, really nice. Now their Napa leather does feel really good, but what I would say is this bolster here, as you can already see, look at the warping going on here. Again, keep in mind, this car has 150 miles on it. And this is exactly basically the same type of seat in Kyle's Polestar 1. This spot exactly on his is really starting to wear out, to the point where the leather is completely ripped here. Again, I think having something like a vegan material would likely wear better, but there's more on that when we jump into the back seat. Really like the white piping here. I do want to make a note of this though. Look how wavy this is. I would say for a luxury vehicle, this should be a lot more precise. Everywhere you kind of look, you start to see that. Look at the piping here. Same thing down here around this area. So I would say the stitching to me does not feel super premium, but it does look nice. I think it's really interesting. Now, I do love the seats here. I love the leather in here. Again, I feel it's a little harder to clean. I like the cloth accents around here. Really gives it a very classy look and style to it. But what I will say is, to me, it feels very disjointed here from the door panel. This door panel to me looks completely plain. This looks to me almost exactly like what you find in Polestar 2. I do like the addition here of having this cloth material, a little bit of leatherette here, which is interesting even in the front, and a nice piping. But I would say overall it looks like somewhat of a boring door panel. Now there are some nice things with that though. I do like not having these high touch point areas here in gloss black. These wear better over time and just look a lot better. Of course, the Bowers & Wilkins speaker system in here, always love how nice this material is here. It's almost like a cheese grater effect, but it looks really nice with the yellow cones in there matching the seat belts. Those little details is what I love. But the material here, I would say, is completely adequate. In my personal opinion, it doesn't necessarily feel like a 70 $72,000 to $74,000 car, but I would say the door panel is the worst part of the interior, while the rest of it is really, really nice. We have a very, very nice steering wheel here. All of these touch points here, I originally didn't like them in the Polestar 2, but after spending more time with Kyle's Polestar 1, I really have come to like the actual steering wheel controls. Now, I would say one thing I do appreciate in here is how nice the piano black looks. But of course, as you know, piano black does scratch over time. So while this looks great now, over time, all these high impact touch areas will get scratched up. Same exact thing in Kyle's Polestar 1. Looks great right now, maybe not in the future. Love the crystal shifter here. It looks super, super elegant and nice, and really like the implementation of the actual touchscreen in here. It looks like it's a part of the vehicle, not just slapped on there. So I would say lots of very nice accents here. I actually really appreciate the kind of more chrome effect on here. It really highlights and accents this interior very nicely. Really like how all of this knurled finish on here. This feels great. I will say one thing with the knurled button here, or scroll wheel, this volume knob just goes to 1,000,000. It's like you turn it a little bit and it's just cranking the speaker up. So I don't love that, especially with the high-end sound system like this. Yes, it can probably handle it, but I do think you may risk blowing it out. When I was just cleaning the interior in here, I quickly accidentally swiped, and like 3/4 of a turn is full blast. And I'm like, okay, so need to make sure the system is off. But I do think it's a very, very nice place to be. The headliner in here, I love having it black. Now, I would say this material could be slightly nicer. It's not the end of the world, but yes, I do think it could be nicer. Now, these are probably the cheapest sunshades I've ever seen. They feel very plasticky, very hard, and again, doesn't really match the interior. So I'm finding that there are accents inside here that I really, really like and appreciate. These seats are super, super comfortable. I like the accents that they use with the white piping, white stitching, and the cloth on the Napa leather. But I think there are areas in here that could be improved. Yes, this is a $72,000, $74,000 car as spec'd, but I think some of these areas could be slightly nicer. But overall, I think what a nice place to sit. You sit nice and low in this seat. Just a few nitpicks here from my perspective on the interior. Now, jumping here into the back seat, and it should be noted that I do have the seats pushed up all the way forward so I can get the mats in here. This is not really representative of how the vehicle actually sits. This is not your total legroom. The back seat, I would say, is slightly small, but more than adequate to throw children back there, to throw full-size adults back here, and even have a dog in the rear end. Now, the back seat here, all of this material here is leatherette. And this is something like you find on, say, our Volkswagen ID4, where the whole interior is like that. And I find, again, leatherette is way easier to clean than something like all natural, really high grain Napa leather. It just feels a lot better in my personal opinion. Now, a few things like this though. Look at the wrinkles down here by the ISOFIX point. That to me does not scream luxury, and think that should be improved. Again, same thing here on this bolster. Maybe as it wears in, as this material is freshy fresh, that will relax, but I think it's going to do the opposite. I think this is going to continue to wrinkle, so I think that could definitely be improved. I do like that we still have the cloth and the piping back here, or the accented stitching. Looks very, very nice. Looks like a great back seat, all except for the door panels, where I think those still need to be slightly improved. Again, this material isn't terrible. It's just not great, if you will. So yeah, I think a few little things could be fixed here, but there's more than enough that you need back here as far as legroom, headroom. Also have rear heated seats back here, which is very nice to see. It is interesting to note how large this gear tunnel is. Of course, this not being a full BEV, but the Polestar 2 also has a huge center console all the way throughout. So impressive here. Now, I would say the most important area for a wagon, of course, is back here. This is the optional powered tailgate here. works phenomenally. Back here, plenty of space, nice rear integrated sunshade here that you can just boom, pop in. Not gonna put that in or out right now. You do have a little cargo space here under the floor where you can put charging cables or things like that. But I would say this is not a massive trunk, but yes, for a wagon, it is pretty darn good. So I would say overall, interior is nice, needs a few little improvements for me to just be like, this is the absolute unit. Yes, it is way cheaper than something like an RS6 or an E63 wagon. I don't think on paper performance-wise, this is necessarily as spicy as those, but you get some really cool accents with the Brembo brakes, the Öhlins dampers, and at quite a substantial price difference. So lastly, I think it's time to give my final thoughts on the V60 Polestar here. And I think this is a machine that is really, really cool. It's very unique. It's one of those, if you kind of know, you know types of vehicles. I think it's a very awesome car here for Colorado. You can set the Öhlins dampers to very soft to take the kids to soccer practice, throw the dogs in the back, and then you can crank them up and go tear up a mountain road and have some serious fun and quite a nice practical package. So I think this is kind of a really neat vehicle that you can, you know, do kind of everything with. Now, of course, having those Öhlins dampers, having manually adjustable in here as per like the RS6 where you just go on the touchscreen, you go sport mode, comfort mode. Yes, that's easier, but I think this for the enthusiast is kind of a lot cooler and definitely a little bit more hardcore on suspension and handling characteristics. I haven't driven this car. I've heard a lot from Kyle on this, on his kind of impression on this vehicle. And he's like, dude, this thing is really the one. So I would say build quality, fit and finish, very, very nice. I loved working on this paint. Truly one of the kind of high-end vehicle paints that I've worked on and feels really, really nice. I still think the interior needs some slight refinements. It almost is getting to the point where it does feel dated when you compare it to something like the Teslas and all the things you can do. That's my personal opinion. Of course, you may disagree, but man, I think this is a very nice place to be. It's such a practical vehicle, but I think interior wise, I think there are some areas that they could improve and things to consider for future generations of this vehicle. But man, oh man, I really, really, really like this V60 Polestar, of course, D-badge back here. So thank you guys so much for watching another out of spec detailing video here with the 2024 Volvo V60 Recharge Polestar Engineered. What a name on that. But thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in another one soon. Bye-bye.